Aside from virtual support groups, the practice of mindful meditation on your own is another way to manage the stress and anxiety that you might be experiencing during these uncertain times. We had the chance to check in with Dr. Amici J and Scott Rogers, co-directors of the University of Miami's UMindfulness Initiative, who've been on our program before. They share the benefits of making mindfulness a constant practice in our lives, especially right now.
My name is Dr. Amici J, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Miami. I'm a neuroscientist, and I study how the brain pays attention. I look at the brain systems that help pay attention. But after studying it for many years, what we realized is that it's also quite vulnerable and fragile. And the things that make it vulnerable are things like stress and poor mood and threat. So the way mindfulness training actually even entered my lab's research was because it was one of the only ways that people were reporting that it may actually help strengthen attention.
My name is Scott Rogers. I am the director of the Mindfulness and Law program at the University of Miami School of Law. I've been a student of mindfulness for the better part of the last 30 years. And while I was practicing law in an area known as commercial litigation, I found that as I surveyed the landscape of my colleagues and dear friends and myself, that there was a great deal of stress, and that the mindfulness practice, which by then I had been practicing for maybe 15 years, had been hugely helpful for sort of maintaining a steadiness in the midst of many of these challenges. And wanting to share that with others, I found that there was a lot of interest in the nature of the mind and becoming anxious and worried when thinking about the future, reflecting on the past and feeling regret. And I became very interested in wanting to share with others meaningful, accessible, enjoyable ways of better understanding mindfulness and being able to, in fact, engage in those practices.
Mindfulness is the ability to pay attention to our present moment experience without a story about it, without judgment or emotional reactivity. It's about really being in the here and now without editorializing about what's happening. And that gives us more direct access to our lives. One of the things that's absolutely key when we think about mindfulness is providing people with a suite of exercises to train the mind to be better able to do this. The UMindfulness Initiative was launched about a decade ago. Scott Rogers and I wanted to come together to really achieve three things regarding the offerings of mindfulness in our community. The first was to launch a series of research projects that would help us understand how to best deliver the training so it's accessible, scalable, and relevant for the people in our community. And also see what the brain basis was of the kinds of changes that mindfulness training can help with. The second thing we wanted to do is begin offering public courses that anybody could take if they were interested in learning how to actually practice these different techniques. And the third was to help really build a community. So we offer lectures and opportunities for people to come together with outside speakers coming in to talk about mindfulness and their work in that area. I would say the medical profession is one of those that is experiencing an extreme moment right now. But there are professions for whom poor mood, stress, threat are not simply just the annoyances or unfortunate aspects of being human, the ups and downs of life, but they actually describe the professional context that people need to show up and do their best jobs in. So think of a firefighter or a police officer or a EMT. We also think about groups like soldiers and other military services that need to show up when things are not going well, or that are actually called to ensure our safety and our good health. One of the reasons we're interested in working with those groups is because they need to keep attention at the top of their game, even when the stakes are very high, not just for themselves and their own safety, but for many of us that rely on their ability to do their job well.
Professions like firefighters that have always been high stakes, high consequence, high stress have moved to another level in that regard, with their own safety being especially at play, while trying to be helpful to others in an environment where those they're wanting to help have more issues that they have to be attentive to. And so the mindfulness-based attention training program called MBAT is a short-form mindfulness training that has been developed specifically for these groups, given the time constraints that they have to be able to learn mindfulness and learn to practice mindfulness and to be able to then bring it more fully into their professional lives and their personal lives.
One recent study that we did in partnership with the Miami-Dade Fire Department is offer firefighters a 4-week program, and we contextualized that program so it was relevant for firefighters. We were interested in how resilient they were. How easily could they bounce back if they experienced a challenge, whether it was a difficult call or being on call trying to fight a fire for an extended period of time. We were also interested in their mood and their attention. For those that practiced the exercises we gave them, the mindfulness practices, they had stronger attention by the end of the time they were in our program. So I think that attention is really important right now. And it ends up that those same challenges that always make attention vulnerable, stress, poor mood, and threat, are particularly prominent right now. Whether it's fear regarding our own potential to contract the virus or economic uncertainty, or when life will, quote unquote, go back to normal. These are all strong preoccupations that we're all collectively experiencing. And what happens to attention when we experience those things? We would say that attention gets hijacked. We are no longer in the present moment. We're already thinking to what's summer going to look like? What's fall going to look like? What's happening to my 401k? Will I be able to keep my job, my house? All of this cascade of mental content just comes up, and we're no longer here and now. I think that mindfulness has a big role to play because even though we may have the wish to stay in the present moment, our mind has a mind of its own in some sense. And we need practices to train our mind to show up in the here and the now. That's what we can do with mindfulness training. It's beyond just wishing for our mind to be focused, present, steady, and emotionally calm, but actually thinking of these as capacities that are trainable, that we can train our brain to be able to do well.
You can watch the extended interview and get more info on the UMindfulness Initiative on our Facebook page at Your South FL. While you're there, take some time to practice mindfulness. Scott Rogers walks us through a simple 3-minute meditation you can do right at home.